All right, guys, welcome to the Osceola Tailgate Show. My name is Pat Burnham, and I am joined today by former FSU offensive lineman and Osceola football analyst Mark Salva, who we refer to as Sully on our show. And then, of course, as always, on our Osceola Tailgate, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Charles Fishbein, Osceola recruiting analyst and pretty good prognosticator who is getting let go from their jobs on a fairly regular basis since we've done this. But for those of you that have not joined us, this is the first live show that we have done on Osceola Tailgate. And Mark, we've come a long way since doing these late Sunday afternoon taped Seminole Sideline show 4 years ago. It's been quite a season, but hey, happy Thanksgiving to you guys.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving to you too, brother. You too, Fish.
Same to you guys.
Everybody out there on Seminole land.
Have you got all your grocery shopping done? And
yeah, as soon as we're done with this, I'm starting to cook.
I've already stuffed my bird, so.
Well, are you guys doing oven baked or fried turkeys this year?
I'm smoking a turkey breast and doing one in the oven.
I'm doing oven, but somebody's got to show me how to fry one. I want to see how that's done.
Go on the internet. Go on YouTube. You'll see some good stuff on fried turkeys.
All right.
Yeah, come hang out with my brother and me. We usually do it. We usually sit outside and do the turkey, and then we put usually do fried shrimp after the turkey. So we have
what you need to do. What you need to do is go on YouTube and do fried turkey fails, and just make sure your fire insurance is up on your house.
Well, we do it outside, away from any part of the house.
Yeah, I'm not doing that thing inside. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, it's going to be It's going to be a great weekend, great family weekend, and of course, another thing that makes this weekend so great is the fact that Florida State gets to do a little Gator gigging with Florida coming to town in the 66th renewal of the state's biggest rivalry, Florida State versus Florida. Listen, FSU's looking to secure its 5th win in a row to finish the regular season, and of course, finish with a 9-3 record. First of all, guys, just I know I had them topping out at 8, so they've exceeded my expectations even before we get to Florida. So my record was 7-5 was my prediction. Of course, as I try to tell Mark, all my predictions for records are plus or minus 2 to either side. So I'm still in that gray area. But just hey guys, what do y'all think about the season so far and how this team has done? And can you believe we're sitting here talking about a 9-win season for Florida State before they even get to a bowl game?
Well, obviously, I'm so enjoying watching this team play. Especially these last couple of weeks, really all year I have. I think, for those of us that really have followed him closely the last 3 years, especially since Mike got here, you start to see signs even in the first year, even that COVID year, just what he was trying to do. And then, of course, last year starting 0-4, but then seeing the team fight through that and seeing the incremental progress and seeing where the holes were, and then seeing them go through the transfer portal and fill those gaps. And then you kind of saw the LSU game really gave you a lot of hope, right? I mean, when I saw that game, that was an epiphany to me to say we could play with anybody on any given Saturday if we play our best. And then we hit that stretch where, we lost some key guys. Travis was hurt, gimping around, and you just, we hit that stretch where we lost 3 games, and you just like, man. And then the open week, right? The open week to me it wasn't as much as a physical break as it was a mental break. It was just a total reset, I think, mentally for us. And, all that work and all that culture building, and people are throwing around the word culture way too much. I hear all these first year culture. Yeah, whatever. Basically, you're saying the standard of how you're going to work and how you're going to perform, right? Teams take on the personality of their coaches, especially their head coach. And after that break, you just kind of saw a light come on and all that coalesced, and you just saw guys playing high level. And now look, I'm under no illusion that we played, the world beaters of the world. And every team we played was flawed, but I don't care. Those games were over by half, and we did what we had to do. And, we're doing things that winning football teams do. And even though some of those teams we played, were having most of them having quarterback issues. They still had pretty good defenses, and this offense has just really just exploded with the number of weapons and the ways that it can attack you. And then the defense has just been, just playing, I won't say flawless, but I'll say that they're doing what they're supposed to do, right? Guys in the right spots. The strengths that we have really show up. The weaknesses are kind of minimized, and they're just playing really well right now. So it's fun to watch it. Did I see it coming? I think I hoped it would. It's a really long answer to say, I got to give those players a lot of credit for pushing through the hard times and to keep working and to get to this spot, because it's not easy, because it was easy everybody to do it, right? And they've got it done. So that's just kind of the way I feel right now.
Well, listen, and they have been a lot of fun to watch. And we said coming into the season as the Osceola staff that there was a different feel around this football team coming into in the camp. They carried themselves differently. The coaches did not have to push them as much in practice as they had in previous years. And when you, like you said, Mark, when you're around a team as much as Mike gives us the chance to be around his football team, you kind of get a sense for things, right? Like any other relationship that you have in life. And it was just a different feel for this football team as it entered the season. I don't think that I saw them winning 9 games in the regular season, which they have a unbelievable chance to do on Friday night against Florida. But listen, third year in Mike's program, we've talked about it. You've already said it, and I said it coming into the season. This team started mirroring Mike's intensity and focus
and energy
on a weekly basis, and they. See, we talked about early on with resolve, that some of the resolve we saw early in the season from this football team coming back from adversity. We saw it in every game that they were down. They came back from adversity. That's resolve. We've seen it in the games where, we've watched them in 4 back-to-back games, Mark and Fish, and we worried, would there be a letdown? And there is no letdown in this group. And it is it's been fascinating to watch. They're certainly further along than I thought they would be. Fish, I'll let you expound a little bit.
I think the biggest concern we all had before the season, and you saw it in the 3-game stretch where they lost, is the health of certain players on the team. Jordan Travis, losing Verse and Lovett. You saw that depth hadn't been built up during the season yet. So that's why there was concern about whether they could win 6, 7, 8 games. That the whole success of this team was going to be based on how healthy they stayed. And now there was proof in the past that certain guys didn't stay healthy. So that's why I have less expectations than where they ended up. I mean, they've had a great season. I don't believe in this, hey, they won this game because this team was hurt or that. Listen, that all shakes out throughout the season. They've had the unlucky breaks in years past. Yep. They've stayed healthy. It's just part of football. You got to stay healthy. You see the teams that don't stay healthy, they have poor seasons. Florida State's been pretty fortunate so far, knock on wood. And you know what? They've worked to get to that 8-win season. This team's grinded through, 2 prior seasons where they didn't do so well. These kids have bought in. And I agree, but you can't take away the fact that they've won 8 games and they're going for 9. I don't like to do that. I'm the same way when teams lose. There's a reason why they lose, and it's just part of the game.
Well, listen, they played the teams that were on their schedule, and they've beaten the vast majority of them badly, and been in some of the others that they did not win. And listen, we talk about health, and health is an issue for everybody in football, right? The old saying is that you're never healthy from day one of practicing full pads, and that's the case for everybody and every team. But and they did listen. Florida State had its share of injuries. We were without the starting quarterback for over half a game against Louisville. Tate came in and did a great job in that game. They were out their best defensive lineman, Fabian Lovett, and still won a bunch of ball games without him. But probably to the health standpoint, they did. Coach Bowden and every coach you've ever talked to will tell you need a little luck in a 12-game season, right? And they got that. Listen, they stayed healthy at linebacker, which was key because they had no depth there. They stayed healthy at quarterback for the most part outside of the 3 quarters that Jordan missed. So, that is part of it. And it's just amazing that we're sitting here talking about this. And this is a team now that last night was ranked 16th in the college football playoff rankings. I'm not sure that any of us saw that coming. And listen, they have a chance. Depending on and we'll talk a little bit about this later, they have a chance to move up substantially in the rankings, depending on what happens in some of these rivalry games this weekend. And listen, they could end up in a really, really big bowl. We've heard the Orange Bowl. We had Kurt Weiler on, our senior writer, on Seminole Sidelines on Sunday night. He's talking about the fact that this team could end up in the orange or cotton. There's also the Holiday Cheez-It and Gator Bowl that are being bandied about, but it sounds like it's probably going to be one of those 5. And I heard last night maybe the Alamo Bowl is now in there, but as a possibility. But listen, let's talk about this. Mark, you played for Coach Bowden. You coached for Coach Bowden. He wanted to see his teams play their best football at the end of the year. Florida State certainly doing that under Mike Norvell in season 3. Is Florida State the best team playing the best football in the ACC as we wind down this 2022 regular season?
Yeah, I think they're playing the best. I don't think there's any question. We're pretty healthy. I think we're hitting on all cylinders. Everybody kind of looking sharp. Defense is flying around. Making plays. There has been no let up in 4 games, and that's a hard thing to do. I don't care who you're playing.
Right.
And so, yeah, they're playing the best right now. Now, we're not the best because our record is not the best, and that's just the reality of the situation. We got to own up to that. And you know what? That's we had our opportunities, and we didn't take advantage of them during that 3-game stretch, and that's reality. But I wouldn't want to play us right now. I wouldn't want to play us in this moment.
Fish, what do you got going on over there with that?
Well, I mean, until North Carolina decided to poop the bed against Georgia Tech, they were playing the best football. But yeah, Florida State right now is playing the best football as far as just sound football. They're not making a whole lot of mistakes. They're playing well. They're dominating these teams. You can argue that they're playing as well as anybody in the country. Forget the ACC. So you got to give them a lot of credit. But yeah, they definitely are one of the hot teams in the ACC.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're playing as good as anybody and could beat anybody in the ACC right now. They almost, they came back against Clemson, which is, ranked 7th or 8th in the playoff poll. I believe it's 8th. They're ranked in the college football playoff rankings, and I think Florida State can certainly go head to head with them at this point in the year. And one of the reasons they have been on this hot streak, Mark, and we like talking about this. FSU has rushed for 200 yards in 6 straight games, going for a 7th against Florida. They may have a good shot about that to do that against Florida, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we get into our Florida preview. Obviously, this has drawn a lot of attention to Alex Atkins, who is a semifinalist for the Broyles Award. I was listening to a radio show in Tampa today, JP Peterson, who is usually on the Osceola Tailgate, and JP's talking about he is hearing Alex's name at USF as a potential head coaching candidate there. But just, Mark, you played offensive line at Florida State. You played on some really good teams with some really good teammates and running backs. Just talk about how hard it is to run for 200 yards in 6 straight games, let alone 7.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's when you're that committed to the run, you're getting everybody's best shot to stop the run, right? I mean, if I'm a opposing defensive coordinator, I think number one note is, stop the run or minimize the impact of the running game. And that's got to be square one. So to be able to do it for 6 straight weeks and get over 200 yards rushing is not easy. Now, what makes it so amazing, and the reasons behind it, is just the variability that we have in running the ball. I mean, it's not just run the zone and, quarterback reads. It's zone, counter, jet sweep, quarterback reads, quarterback scrambles. There's a myriad of ways. We run out of the pistol, we run out of the gun. We run out of so many different personnel groups. I mean, you can scheme to stop the run, but Alex Atkins and Mike Norvell, they're going to find a way to run the football. And so far that's been true because we've run the ball against everybody. LSU, we ran the ball really well. Clemson, we ran the ball really well. Some top, statistically, some top run defenses we've played against, we've been able to run the ball against everybody. And I don't see any reason why that should be any different.
So we get into the Florida preview. We're going to talk about why it's probably not going to be different. But listen, another thing you and I have talked about a little bit, Mark, and I don't know if Fish has had the chance to join in on this or not. We talked a little bit on sidelines Sunday night. Listen, there's always continued player development within within any one season, right? But I'm not sure that I've ever seen as many players continue to develop, because you kind of get into your roles kind of defined, right, once the season starts. But we've seen some guys. You and I have talked about how DJ Lundy just seems to get better and better and better as each week goes on, and how important that was at Florida State, because they were lacking proven depth at linebacker. But you're a former coach. You've witnessed this firsthand. Coached at South Carolina for 5 years, obviously a graduate assistant at Florida State for 3. Just talk a little bit about the development you've seen across the board with this football team this season.
So this is for me, a testament to the coaches and the organization and the commitment to continue to improve players during the course of the season. Because let me tell you something, as a former coach, this is not easy, because development happens when you work on the little things, the skill sets that you need to perform your role on the team. And that takes individual drills with your position and just your coach. And that time during the season is shrunk from the, training camp. You get a ton of it, right? You in the spring, that's all you do, a bunch of it. And then during camp, you still do a bunch of it, but then you start installing things, you start running plays and try to work on timing and all that stuff as cohesive unit. When you get into the season, you add game planning and all that, and trying to work against the different looks you're going to see. The temptation is to steal away from individual work time and spend more time on the scheme part, on the game plan, and how you're going to attack a team. And because practice is limited. And then you get later in the season when you're trying to take care of people's bodies and trying to minimize the practice time and get them off the field and get their legs back and heal up injuries, practice time shrinks even more. And so you really lose that individual time. When I was a coach, I would beg for all the individual time I could get with my position group during the course of practice, and it wasn't very much. So I'd have to steal it from other places. When they're working special teams, well, there's not a lot of offensive linemen in special teams, so we're going to go off in the corner and we're going to work on stuff, right? Everybody does that. But I wouldn't even watch film of the other team until Wednesday night or Thursday. I spend Monday, Tuesday, and probably Wednesday's meeting, not watching film, but having them doing walkthroughs and working on drills before we even went out to practice, and I learned that from Wayne McDuffie. That's what we used to do when I played, because that development is just so critical in order to grow and maintain your sharpness, right? So it's not easy to do. It takes a tremendous amount of organization. It takes a commitment to want to do that. And, oh, by the way, we have a very complex offense, complex in the way that we, the number of things that we do, the sheer inventory of stuff that we do, that we're still able to execute at a high level. So to me, that's a great job by our coaches and the organization that they show and the commitment they show to do that. It's not easy.
Well, yeah, and I just can't. But listen, they've come such a long way. You go back to the other side, offensive side of the ball, Mark and Fish, and there was not one proven or consistent playmaker outside of Jordan Travis on the offense last year. Besides Trayshawn Ward, Trayshawn had a great year. Toafili had stretches, but now he's got half a dozen to 10 guys that could be the leading receiver in any one game. But Johnny Wilson and Micah Pittman, Ontario Wilson, Lawrence Toafili, Trey Benson. We've seen Cam McDonald have good games where he was a leading pass catcher. We're starting to see more and more of Marquiston Douglas, and that's just been amazing to see. Fish, I want to hear your thoughts. You spend your livelihood watching kids develop in your business with Elite Scouting Services. Just talk about what you've seen from the beginning of the year to going into the Florida game.
Well, I told you guys before the season, the potential was there with a lot of these guys. You look at Jared Verse. I had seen that athletic ability when he played against Syracuse, but there was a lot of stuff that I saw wrong, and I'm like, all right, this kid's going to take 6 months, 6 games, 7, 8 games to get to where he could be a part of the defense. And then I thought at the end of the season, he'd start to take off, and then next year would be his year. Well, he blew up from day one and exceeded all of that. And then you look at somebody like Trey Benson. Trey struggled, I thought, until about 3 or 4 games ago. You saw the potential, but he never took it to that next level. And then all of a sudden he looks like Greg Jones running over DBs and crushing guys. That's where that's impressed me, is these guys, even Ontario Wilson and Toafili. Here are 2 guys that could have easily quit the team. They brought in guys to play over them. You've never heard a complaint from either guy. And they've gone out and they've performed at a very high level. I think all of those scenarios is what's very impressive about this team, because each one is a totally different situation. Some of the guys were already here, and I think a lot of the receiver improvement has come by competition. We talk about it. You get better by bringing in better players. They brought in 4 receivers all of a sudden. That put pressure on those younger guys to say, hey, listen, we got to put the work in or we're going to lose our jobs. We're going to be on the bench. We've seen it with Keyshawn Smith that, or Helton, that if you don't do what you need to do, you're not going to be heard from them again. So I think they've done a very good job of all around getting these guys better, playing at a level. And football's a team sport. All these guys have come together and played well as a team and gelled, and that's what's most impressive to me.
I'll tell you what is probably the biggest key to all of this development is and Fish touched on it, is the competition, not only within your position group, but, the other part of that is, during the course of practice, you do, receivers versus DBs one-on-one. You do one-on-one pass pro with the offensive lineman versus the defensive lineman. You may do some other, smaller kind of drills, 3-on-3, things like that. You're going against some good on good during those times. And, I was thinking back on this the other day. I don't know that our offensive line has probably had to pass block a better defensive line than ours. I mean, practice is probably the people we practice against when we go live are better than the people we've been playing. And that's the way it used to be at FSU for so long, that the games would be, well, they're not as good. I go against harder people every day. The game was kind of like, this is just fun. And I think that's a big part of it too, is that the quality of the reps that they're getting when they're doing those types of drills and periods during practice are so much better. And that has contributed to the quality that we're seeing translate onto the field.
Yeah, what was fun to watch as this season went on, we would watch, they do the combo pass rush drill, Mark. After they get through with one-on-one, they'll do, stunts and blitz pickup. It's really stuff.
Yeah. Twist back up and stuff.
Yeah, 2-on-2 essentially. And what was interesting to watch when they started camp, the Florida State defense would wear out the Florida State offense in that drill. And as practice progressed, we got closer to the season and into the season, you would see that offensive line just continue to hold its own a little bit better each and every day. And they did get better. And I think you're right. I think it's because of the level of competition and going against a guy like Jared Verse and Fabian Lovett. Then, listen, Farmer's going to be a good player. Jarrett Jackson's got potential, as does Ray. We've seen Dennis Briggs flash at times. And going back to Jared Verse, listen, I don't know who found him. But that was a heck of a find, and maybe that guy will have a little something extra in his Christmas stocking this year.
He needs a little NIL money thrown.
Yeah, he needs to take a percentage, I think. But yeah, listen, it's been fun to watch a guy like. And we're getting ready to move on to the Florida preview because I know that's why people are watching. But it's been fun. Of course, it's been fun to watch the transformation of Marquiston Douglas from a raw athlete who came in, could have gone either way, whether it ended up at tight end or offensive tackle, got in shape and has just gotten better and better and better every single game. And that catch he made against Louisiana last weekend was phenomenal for that.
I throw Pat Payton in there too. That guy's getting better and better and better and better.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think if we went down the list, now what we got to do is in our next show we'll have to do our surprises of the year. Who surprised us the most? But listen, when you're winning, you win everywhere, Fish. And Florida State is rolling it up on the field, and they are now starting to roll it up off the field. They flipped 2023 quarterback prospect Brock Glenn on Wednesday. Monday night, this whole Thanksgiving week. Anyway, 2 nights ago, they flipped Brock Glenn to Florida State. You and I have talked about him on Reeling Them In. Just talk a little bit about your thoughts on Brock Glenn and what that says about what Florida State's doing. They did flip him from Ohio State. That probably doesn't happen a lot to Ohio State, and particularly right now with the role they've got going on and have had going on for about the last 15 years. But just talk a little bit about him and your thoughts on him as a prospect.
Yeah, I went back and watched him again after we spoke the other day, and the more I watch, I like him even more and more, just because some of the things he can do, the big plays there all the time. We talked about it. You can't argue with Ohio State's success. Even the guys that have left, like a Joe Burrow that they recruited, ended up going somewhere else and starring and becoming a first-round pick. So Ryan Day does a very good job of evaluating quarterbacks. I always look at those guys that are the best at doing that and see the quarterbacks they're recruiting, because I think that there's certain guys in college football that do a very good job of evaluating and developing these guys, and Ryan Day is one of the better ones out there. I like everything pretty much about him. I like his arm. We talked about he's not the greatest athlete, but he moves well enough that you could design run plays. He's not going to be Jordan where he's going to break off an 80-yard touchdown run, but if it's 3rd and 8, and the other team's playing in man coverage and they turn their backs, he could take off and pick up the 8, 9, 10 yards. He's very effective at pushing the ball. It's the mechanics and the footwork. He, like I said before, he crosses up his feet sometimes when he's getting rid of the ball. He's not going to be able to get away with that in college. And his mechanics, he has a quick release, but he needs to get his hands and his feet kind of on the same level, like it's a more natural thing for him to do. But the physical talent's there. He has a very strong arm as far as being able to push it outside the hash marks. I think we've talked about that. I think once FSU is able to throw the ball outside those hash marks a little more in the future, it's going to open up the whole offense. And that makes you as an offense that much harder to defend for a defense. If you have to cover the entire field up and down the field, you basically control what's going to happen that game. And I like this kid a lot. I've told you, you got to take a quarterback every year. You see guys all the time that aren't highly rated. You take one of these guys, you put them on the bench, you develop them, and 2 years from now, you could have a first-round, second-round pick and a guy leading you to the playoffs.
Yeah, they've already got their guy for next year, Luke Cromenhalt from Savannah, Georgia. So 2 quarterbacks committed to Florida State for the next 2 classes. Listen, Mark and I were talking about it yesterday. I was trying to go back and think of a Florida State quarterback that he reminds me of. Now, obviously, I saw very few of the Florida State quarterbacks play that when I was working in college football, which constituted 10 years of my life. I can't, there's about 10 years I can't speak to, and this may be a too old a reference for some of the people that watch this show, but he kind of reminds me a little bit of Casey Weldon.
I was just going to tell you that, man. I think very similar to Casey, very underrated, probably one of the more underrated quarterbacks that have played at Florida State, but I see the comparison. I was going to say Casey Weldon.
Yeah, and of course, Casey won a lot of games and finished second in the Heisman. I believe the Charles Woodson, if I'm not mistaken, or was that
no?
Who did he lose? Desmond.
Desmond. Yeah, it was Desmond. Because we beat Desmond that year, 52-20 something.
Oh.
Yeah, that was 91, right?
Yeah, that was the Buckley pick for a touchdown.
That's right. I was supposed to go to that game, but I just started coaching high school football and could not go. My parents had bought me a ticket to surprise me, and so they waited to the Thursday night before they were leaving town, and to break the news that, hey, we had to get a refund on your ticket, but you're coaching high school football now, so you're not going. But
you didn't miss much. You missed the quietest 100,000 you ever saw.
Well, that would have been fun to see, but I had a good time. I think I went horseback riding after the game was over. Listen, we're here for the Florida State game. We all love this game. And we're going to get into our preview now. Certainly, unusual year for Florida. I think. I think I had modest expectations for this program with the unproven quarterback coming into the season, but they are 6-5 in Billy Napier's first year. They are more run-driven offense than they have been in the past. When you think of Florida, you think of them chunking it all over the place wide receivers scoring touchdowns, and they're the 17th leading rushing team in the nation just from a yardage gain aspect. Anthony Richardson is a very talented quarterback, but has been inconsistent. Mark, I know you've watched a lot of film, and listen, there's been a culture shift. They've kicked some players off the team, some players have left. We see that in the first year when coaches take over. That seems to have kind of run its course. But just talk a little bit about your impressions of Florida's offense, Mark. And
Yeah.
how Billy Napier's done, try to transition that program.
Yeah, they remind me a little bit of Clemson in this way, that they had the big quarterback that they like to run, that has a big arm that can take deep shots and go over the top. Their backs are shifty. They're good, solid SEC backs. I don't know they're superstars. And Etienne is a young kid still, but they're shifty, and they squirt through the little seams and stuff, and are capable of making some chunk runs. But they're not very variable in terms of what they try to do. I mean, they run the zone and they run the zone read. I think what Vanderbilt did great was they had a plan to make sure that, they crowded the box, and they had at least one guy watching Richardson, and he had a give read at just about every time. And because I've seen there's been a lot of talk about, well, he didn't run very much. Well, they didn't give him a run look. And Vanderbilt did a good job of just kind of mucking it up in the line of scrimmage enough to where they really couldn't get the running game going. And so that seemed like a good plan for them. But they really overly commit. I can't believe Florida couldn't take advantage of the way they were just, giving them, playing man coverage across the board, and Florida really didn't take advantage of that. So it would seem to me that, and it's easy to say, but, obviously the way that Anthony Richardson goes, so goes the Florida offense in terms of, so what makes him not go? Well, making him hand it off helps, right? How Florida State chooses to do that, that's going to be the interesting thing, right? I think it's easy to say, well, let's just stack the box, but that's not necessarily us. I think what Florida State has done good, and where we're really good on defense, is that, we have Keem Dent and Jamie Robinson. We like to start them off with that 2 safety look, but, if we play quarters across the board, where those safeties can still impact the run and still play the pass, that's, to me, would be the best way to kind of handle that. It's kind of like the old Miami teams did when they played. When Miami was great, they had those cover fours. They had Sean Taylor, Ed Reed, Brian Blades, and they had those guys that could really play those run lanes. And that's kind of what we're doing. And of course, we do have Randy Shannon, so that might be why we're doing it so well now, right? Makes sense. So just, stopping the run is key, because out on the perimeter, they're not great. Their receiver, I think they have some injuries on the receiver core.
Yeah, they do. There's a chance that 51% of their receptions goes through 3 guys, and Ricky Pearsall and Xavier Henderson may or may not play. Xavier did not play last week. He leads them in receptions, and Pearsall is second in receiving yards, and he's questionable according to the guy I talked to from Gainesville yesterday. Okay,
so the receivers don't really scare you. So, having those corners kind of lock those guys down, having those 2 safeties back there, being able to play run or pass, and inserting them in at different times, and even rotating in, because they're going to motion a lot. They're going to try to make you declare. They're going to motion, and if a guy follows, you're in man. If a guy doesn't, then you see safeties rotate and all that kind of thing. So how we adjust to those things. So Fuller's going to have to make a decision how he wants to play that, right? Do we just go man across the board and take our chances? Because that's the one thing that scares me, is that he has the arm to, go deep, and we haven't done great against that very much, right?
Well, then you're turning your back to him, which is another.
Well, that's true, but even if we do play zone, right? His ability to throw it out, throw it now. Their receivers aren't great. They're not like, I don't think they're going to outrun our guys, but he does have that ability. If he gets protection, that guys can start breaking away and clearing out, and he can gun it over the top, and that kind of scares you a little bit. The other thing he'll do really well is if you're going to play soft on the outside and give him a 7-yard cushion, he can zip it out there, and they like to hit a lot of hitches, a lot of curls, a lot of outs, So it's run the ball, play action pass on early downs. They'll take a shot every now and then on early downs, but mostly it's going to be, play action pass, zone read, roll out, a little bit of quarterback run, and they'll run a jet sweep every now and then. And that's what they do. It's not really complicated, but they do have some players.
Yeah, and Richardson's not. Listen, he's completing 55% of his passes, and today's offense, that's not a very good mark. So I agree with you. I think you. I think you try to take away the run and say, hey, listen, if you can beat us throwing the ball, more power to you, and we'll adjust as the game goes on. But I think early they do whatever they need, whatever they feel like they need to do to stop the backs and stop Richardson in the quarterback run game. Fish, what do you got?
Yeah, I think Florida State has to jump on this team early like they've done the last few weeks. We've talked about this as another game. I don't want to see Florida State – I don't think they want to get into a close game. I think you got to jump out early on these guys and force Richardson to be a passer. I think if they're able to keep you off balance with his ability to run, they're able to run the ball, then Florida has a shot. I think if you put them down 10, 13 points early in this game and you're forcing him to throw the football, that's not his strength. That's not their offensive strength this year. Florida State can win handily if that happens.
Yeah, you got to make him uncomfortable.
Yep.
His accuracy wanes when there's guys flying around him. That's when his accuracy wanes. But if he gets comfortable back there, and then, let me say this, because I was starting to count watching them play Vanderbilt. I watched them play. I watched a little bit of the Kentucky game, watched the South Carolina game. South Carolina game got zero pressure on them, right? And didn't stop the run real well. Didn't have a good plan. But when he's comfortable back there, he gets rid of the ball pretty quick. I mean, he's not going to hold on to it very long, especially on some of that play action stuff. I mean, it's play action, boom, it's not there. He's gonna pull, he'll pull it down and run it or hit an outlet. But I mean, look, we haven't played a good quarterback in a couple of weeks, right? Every quarterback we've played has been the best. We played DJ Ugalele. That was the last time we played a good quarterback, and they scored 30-something points against us. So that kind of gives you pause a little bit, just to say, hey, we got to take care of our business. But again, that was before the off week, and that was before things really started clicking. It was before we got Verse and Lovett back. So that changes things for sure. And, getting pressure on him from the front line, blitzing him in timely blitzes. And, like I said, the receiving core doesn't scare me. I don't even remember a tight end really catching a ball, So
he has not called. I've got that note somewhere, but no, he has not been a big. Neither of their tight ends that play the most have been a big factor in the passing game.
Yeah,
I'll look that up while you guys are talking. But he's got the leading tight end's got 13 catches for 177 yards. He's only been targeted 20 times all season. So we take care of business in the running game. Make them one dimensional. Score some points early, then that takes them out of their comfort zone for sure. Yeah, listen, they're throwing the ball running the ball about 10% more than they're passing the ball, and they've done a pretty good job of keeping their quarterback clean. They've only allowed 12 tackles all year. They've allowed some pressures. I went back and looked at the PFF numbers for what those are worth, and they have given up a number of pressures, but have kept them relatively clean as far as sacks. And really, Mark, have they're about middle of the. They're really good at not allowing people to play on the other side of the line of scrimmage. 15th in TFLs allowed, but where they've really struggled has been on third down offensively.
Yeah, because they run one play. They run the zone, inside outside zone, and they're obviously well drilled and good at doing that. So there's not, like when you do something that as much as they do, you're going to be pretty good at it. And tackles for losses kind of show that. The other thing FSU is going to probably choose to do, and I'm is putting Kalen DeLoach and spying him on Anthony Richardson. We talked about this on the sideline show, or maybe we talked about it the week before. I can't remember, but Fish, I think, had brought it up. If he was Florida, he'd look at the Louisville game and look at their game plan because of Cunningham.
I was going to bring that up again. That's the way I would go if I was them, just because Louisville had so much success with their quarterback running and mixing in the pass. So
yeah, exactly. But I think what makes Cunningham so dangerous is his speed and shiftiness. He's more like Lamar Thomas, and I think Anthony Richardson is more like Cam Newton. So where we got in trouble with DeLoach spying on Malik Cunningham was Cunningham kind of outran his angles a little bit and, missed a few tackles. And so, having Kalen, I think he would do a better job against Richardson. He's not as fast as Cunningham. He may not be as fast as Kalen, and, making plays on him when he's either breaking the pocket or design quarterback runs.
Yeah, well, let's flip it to the other side, and it's where I really think that Florida State has a tremendous advantage over in this game is their offense against Florida's defense. This is not this is not a defense that I think that most people are looking at when they look at Florida recognize. I mean, they are back in the pack in just about every major statistical category, 98th in total defense, 92nd in rush defense, somewhere in the 80s in pass defense. Don't get to the quarterback very much. I mean, this is the wrong Florida State offense to be rolling this defense out against.
Yeah, but Pat, they play in the SEC with great offenses like Vanderbilt and Texas A&M and Kentucky and Missouri. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know that SEC bias, but listen, they haven't gotten the job done no matter what conference they play in. And I think this is Florida State. I think they're going to find big plays in this game. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I think it's there for the taking offensively. I mean, we present so many problems offensively. 12 guys have caught touchdown passes. Who you gonna cover? Who you gonna rotate to? We got 3 running backs that are just outstanding runners, and each one brings something different to the table. You've got tight ends catching balls. You've got multiple personnel groups. You've got a quarterback that, I've seen this on some discussion forums where they're like, well, Travis doesn't have this, his running stats are down, et cetera, et cetera. Well, number one, he's only played a half in 4 consecutive games. Number two, we haven't had to run him. But when he does run, he's really effective, right? He scores touchdowns. And so, what are you going to defend? And Florida has, look, I watched their Vanderbilt game. I watched their South Carolina game. I watched a little bit, like I said, a little bit of Kentucky. I think their defensive ends can rush the passer. They got good pass rush on the outside. Inside, not so much. They got those 2 big guys in the middle, right, who kind of muck things up. They're not overly sideline to sideline. They don't scare me in that way. And their linebackers are just, they're out. Even with Ventrell Miller being out, he's got his strengths and weaknesses too. But look, we've run the ball on everybody that we've played against. I don't see that changing any way, shape, or form come Friday night. I think where FSU can really have the ability to score some big plays is going to be in the passing game. They're serviceable on the back end. I don't see anybody that really sticks out. They're gonna play a lot of zone, mix in some man, but if they're committed to stopping the run, there's going to be some shots to be had, and there's going to be some chunk plays to be taken advantage of. So, like every offense in college these days, or even NFL, it's how the quarterback plays. So the key is going to be Travis, him executing the offense, and I don't see any reason why he wouldn't do that. He's been doing it all year. He's just absolutely mastered the offense, gotten us in right plays, made some really quality throws. So yeah, I don't see us really slowing down that much, unless for whatever reason. And I don't think it's going to happen. We just start doing stupid things like turning the ball over or penalties and that kind of thing, which we haven't been doing. So I think we're going to score some points on Friday night.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Florida State would have to hand Florida some extra possessions and shoot itself in its foot a little bit. You mentioned Florida stopping. What they're not stopping is the run. They are 108. I know you get tired of me talking about stats, but it does kind of build a picture for the people that are listening and watching. But Florida is 108th in the country in run plays allowed of 10-plus yards. They are 103rd in the country in run plays allowed of over 20 yards. That's not a good matchup when FSU ranks 5th in run plays gained over 10 yards and 3rd in run plays gained over 20, and that's just the run game. Florida defense is 96th in pass plays, giving up over 10 yards, and 59th in pass plays over 20 yards. And FSU, of course, 15th in pass plays over 20 yards as an offense. So listen, you start looking at the numbers and these analytics, and listen, you can make any number look like anything, I guess, but you start looking at it, and this is a game that you feel pretty good about Florida State's chances on offense. Fish, what are your thoughts on how Mike and Alex will attack the Gator defense?
I think you're going to see more of the same. The strength of this team is the run game. I don't think these coaches are stupid. They know Florida's weakness is stopping the run. Florida State's strength has been the run all year. You go all the way back to Florida's game against Utah. I remember the final drive. You could see back then that their defense wasn't very good. Utah went right down the field, I think, with like 50 seconds. Had a chance to win the game. They threw a pick. The Gator defense came up. Mark brought up some good points. I do have a little concern with their DNs putting pressure. You saw in the Clemson game that the tackles at FSU did struggle a little bit. These are going to be two of the better pass rushers. And I'm curious to see how the size of Florida up front does against Florida State's offensive line. Florida State's only faced probably one defensive line with this type of size, and that was Clemson. Clemson's D-line's way better. Don't get me wrong. I'm not putting words out there that this is the Florida D-line's that good, but they do have players that are talented. The problem with Florida's defense mainly is they just lack depth. You could wear them out. You saw it I've seen it in multiple games this year. That's Florida State's strength. Pound and ground. Just keep pounding that ball. I don't care if you get 1 yard, 2 yards early in the game. Just keep pounding it. The big plays will come in the run game eventually. I think that's what's going to be key, is to just keep patient in this game. I do think this game could be close for at least a quarter or two. And Florida State's got to just make sure not to get impatient. You could get impatient in games like this and do stupid stuff. So if they just stay consistent, pound that rock between the tackles, and I like their chances.
Well, and to your point, you talked about the size up front. Defensive end Gervin Dexter's 312 pounds. The nose tackle is 415 pounds. And then, of course, they may be without their best linebacker, Ventrell Miller, for half a game. He got a targeting penalty last week. I know there was some talk of an appeal. I don't know how that went or if it went. But, listen, they're not very deep on defense, I don't think. They've got two pretty good safeties, at least from a production standpoint. But, I don't know if that's a byproduct of them being very good or teams being able to get back to the third level of the defense because they're running the ball all over them. And, Mark, you mentioned the SEC, and this is not a stat necessarily. It's just kind of reading the tea leaves. If you go down Florida's schedule and look at who they beat and look at the teams they lost to, Florida State has a hell of a lot more in common with the teams that beat Florida than the teams that lost Florida. That's not a stat, but do you take anything away from that as far as, Florida State is certainly more LSU-like and than they are Texas
100%. 100%. I thought that same thing when I started looking at the college football playoff rankings and seeing and trying to measure us up against those teams ahead of us. I seem to think, you know what? I would love to play Tennessee. I would love to play Ole Miss. I would love to play, some of these teams that are in front of us. I feel like the way we're playing in our personnel, when we're full speed, is more akin to that rather than, look at some of the teams that Florida lost to, especially offensively, and the teams they struggled with. So, yeah, look, here's the bottom line. We're definitely the better football team in this moment. We're playing more cohesive football. We're playing winning football. I think we're better in key areas for sure. So honestly, I don't care what Florida does. If we go and do what we do, I think we'll win the game.
Well, I mean, if you look at their wins outside of Utah, they're not very impressive. They beat a really bad USF team.
Almost lost.
Yeah, it almost lost that game. They beat Eastern Washington, which I believe is FCF's program. They beat Missouri, which is kind of a middle-of-the-road SEC program. Can beat you on some weeks. You can beat them on some weeks. Then they beat a Texas A&M team that is in all kind of disarray. They beat Texas A&M. That's in all kind of disarray, and obviously was missing 12 to 15 guys because of the flu. They didn't play that whole entire.
And that was their one win on the road, right? Their one big SEC
win
on
the road. And then, of course, they beat South Carolina, which after last week, which we'll talk a little bit later when we go to our college football segment, that's probably their most impressive win outside of Utah. And every other team all the teams they lost to, Florida State certainly has a lot more in common with those folks than they do the teams that Florida beat. So, Fish, what are your thoughts on the type of on that comparison, taking the stats out of it, and just looking at who Florida's beaten and who they've lost to?
I mean, they're just so inconsistent as a team. It's just so hard to evaluate them. I mean, they looked so good against South Carolina, and then they come back and just they don't look like this. This is the problem. You talk about new head coach, things, you don't know what you're going to get week to week. Napier's trying to get this program turned around. They're not a good football team overall, but they're dangerous enough that you have to be concerned that if you make a mistake here or there, listen, you've seen these games before. I mean, I remember when Tebow was, they had Tebow and they had FSU was just getting beat every year. And then that first year where Ponder went against them, Florida was a better team in that game, but Florida State was getting better as that year went on and just beat the heck out of Florida. You just don't know in this game how many times we've seen. You go back to 97 with, and I always get upset about that one, is Brandeis and Johnson coming in and rotating, and Florida State had the best team in the country that year and lost. You just don't know what you're going to get in this game. Mark's been part of it. Anything can happen if one pick goes your way against you early in the game. So this Florida State should be able to beat them. They should be able to beat them handily, but anything can happen in a game like this.
Oh, I agree with that. Listen, I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion by any stretch, because these things do have. Listen, we saw enough last week to know that nothing's guaranteed, right? I mean, we saw some
Georgia Tech
pounding losses by some, and listen, and we're fixing to get into that. Some of these losses have put Florida State in a position to get really high up in the rankings this year and play in a really good bowl game. But you're right. We saw Georgia Tech, a team that North Carolina had no business losing to based off what we've seen. They lost to them. Then you watch USC or South Carolina literally destroy a Tennessee team that was 3 weeks ago the number one ranked team in the college football playoff ranking. So nothing.
Yeah. I mean, here's one thing. If I'm Florida, everybody's saying that we're going to blow right through them. If I'm Florida, I'm coming after it. And I would go after us like through the air. Yeah. I would go for. I would definitely put pressure and press with Richardson as much as I could, because the kid does have an arm. If he gets hot, we let him get hot. It could be a problem. Excuse me. So they got nothing to lose. And that does make him dangerous. And look, their narrative going in, they had beat South Carolina. They had who they played before South Carolina. They beat
Texas. They beat Texas A&M.
Yeah,
they beat Texas A&M. They beat South Carolina, and so they're thinking beat Vanderbilt, and they roll in here, and all of a sudden it's a different narrative. But because of last week happened, that narrative totally changed. You got to take that Vanderbilt game out of it. They obviously were not ready to play. They had some penalties that absolutely changed the face of that game. Some really stupid penalties. I mean, they eliminate those. They beat Vanderbilt, right? And so it's a totally different narrative. So you got to take, you just like with any statistical analysis, you take the best and the worst out of it. What you got left is probably what you got, right? Right. And so, look, man, they are dangerous, and it's one of those things where they're going to come after us, and they're a wounded dog, and Florida State just got to get after it and just take their will.
One of the things too, Mark, is Florida State's kind of been the underdog kind of this whole year. This is really the first time, they're higher in the polls. People are talking about them now. They got to now play to that level. It's easy when you're kind of going under the radar. Nobody's really looking at you. And then all of a sudden, Florida State's kind of snuck up on people this year. So I think that you want to see how they perform as the top team now. And everybody there's expectations now. Hey, listen, we're a good football team. this is what the expectations are now. Not only do the fans expect to win this game, they expect to blow them out. How do the players respond to that too? Not to overdo it, just keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, well, listen, I got a text after I left the game last week that says, I can't believe we get that many points in the fourth quarter. So you can't keep all the fans happy. They were playing guys that aren't on scholarship, that haven't been on the field, and since Duquesne. And anyway, you can't listen. Expectations are what they are. And here's what I do know. Florida State has exceeded the expectations of just about everybody in its fan base, if they're being honest. To the point, and we will listen, we're going to come back with our predictions for the game at the end of the show. But to the point, we had Kurt Weiler, our senior writer, on Seminole sideline Sunday night. And Florida State, if it takes care of business and gets to 9-3, is in a discussion for bowls, including the Orange, Cotton, Holiday, along with Cheez-It, Gator. Now, listen, some things got to play out, right? I mean,
Clemson's got to make the playoff for us to go to the Orange Bowl.
Right. For the Orange Bowl, yeah, I think that. I don't think that's going to happen. But listen, there are a lot of things we didn't see. Could Clemson lose the South? Clemson could lose their last two games. So there's a lot of work to be done. But Florida State has been rumored. Cotton, Orange, Cheez-It, Gator. Holiday, at least those five, which are all good bowls. And there's some games this weekend that will have an impact on where they go. Oregon State, Notre Dame, USC. Obviously, Clemson's got two games that'll impact that. South Carolina, North Carolina. Then North Carolina's got NC State. And then they got Clemson, and then, of course, Kansas State. That's I think Kansas is ranked maybe one spot ahead of Florida State. So there's some games this weekend that will have an impact on where Florida State goes bowling. I don't see Clemson making the college football playoff, so I'm saying the Orange is out. But still, did you think we'd be talking about the Cotton, Holiday, and Cheez-It Bowl coming into this year? Just talking about, and listen, we talked about this in our preseason preview, and we talked about it early in the season. There was going to be a team this year who was going to surprise people in the ACC in a positive way, and there was going to be a team that was going to surprise people in a negative way. To your point, Fish, I think Florida State has proven itself to be the surprise team in the ACC in a positive way, right? I mean, they're going to finish second in the ACC Atlantic. They're going to go to a really good bowl. And but, did you guys think that when we entered the season that we'd be sitting here talking about these particular bowl games?
No, in fact, I have to cancel my reservations in Shreveport now.
Well, that's good. I can't believe you actually made them.
That was hopeful in the beginning of the year, just in case.
Yeah, I just missed it. I just missed when it was called the Pooley and Weed Eater Bowl. That was the best name that bowl's ever had. But Fish, I mean, how surprised are you that we're sitting here talking about a potential Cotton?
I'm very surprised. Honestly, we were talking about making a bowl game. So right. I think that was important, is that to just get to a bowl game and get some positive momentum going into spring football. They've superseded any expectations I had. Like I said, I just wasn't sure. I had concerns about Travis staying healthy and being consistent all year. I thought the loss of Jermaine Johnson would be huge. And honestly, I never thought Verse would be to this level. So they surprised me as a team, as a whole, and individually, there's been a lot of surprises as well. So, yeah, I'm surprised that we're even discussing a New Year Day bowl game or anything close to that. So it's
crazy, man. I hope Jerry takes the entire staff to the bowl, Osceola staff to the bowl game.
Heck yeah.
It could be quite a thing. All right, so let's just talk about bowls, and let's just talk about who. Is there a team or maybe two teams that you would be interested in seeing Florida State play in a bowl, regardless of where they go? Do you have any matchups that you've thought about? Hey, that it'd be kind of cool to see them play this team or that team and kind of validate what we've seen this year. I would love to see Kansas State or UCLA. And I was thinking
Kansas State too, because my next door neighbor is a Kansas State graduate, and we've both been going back and forth a little bit about who's the more surprise team. So that's definitely one that would be interesting. Personally, would be Kansas State. I love playing an SEC team. I love playing an SEC team or a Big Ten team, just to, because this narrative about the ACC, et cetera, all that stuff. I'd love to go in there and take care of business with one of those teams.
Any interest in seeing them play Tennessee?
I'm not scared of Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee without Hayden Hooker is a totally different team, I think.
Yeah, you're right. I forget. No, I didn't scratch that. If he's hurt, I don't want him to play. But yeah, my first two thoughts for UCLA, Kansas State. Now, listen, it'd be fun to see them play. I just don't know how realistic, and I don't know who all the tie-ins are with. I think it'd be cool to see them play Alabama. It'd be an interesting matchup against Oregon. I mean, there are a lot of them, but when I first asked myself this question, just looking at teams with similar records, because that's usually who you play in a bowl against, UCLA and Kansas State were the first two that popped into my head. Fish, what about you?
Yeah, I like UCLA, their team, so it'd be an exciting matchup because they're very good at running the ball. They don't have a good defense, so they'd give up a lot of points. Florida State would be able to move the ball on them. But I think the quarterback is, they're kind of similar teams, as far as offensively. The quarterback's Jordan. I don't think the kid for UCLA is a little bigger, I think, but they probably a little better arm. But they do a lot of the same things he and Jordan do. And the run game, Benson versus Sharman, I think is those may be the two backs off the board the quickest in the draft next year. So that would be a great matchup to see how both teams could handle those running backs.
Now, they'll never do it because these teams are going to open up the season against each other again next year. But it would be fun to see them play LSU right now. Again, I know that's not going to happen. You're not going to play them twice in a season and flip around and play them next August. But that would be a fun game to watch. But yeah, I cannot wait to see. I hope they don't end up in Charlotte. I've seen the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
How about Texas? I can see us playing Texas.
Yeah,
I think we'd beat down Texas. Texas is that's like the most overhyped football program in all of college football. I mean, they really are. I mean,
I love to play them.
They got what they do have a winning record this year, so let's go.
I mean, I think if I was a betting man, I'd say it's the Gator Bowl against an SEC team. Either I don't know who would be that.
I've seen Kentucky projected. That one does not interest me at all. I don't like that matchup. I've heard South Carolina. I don't like that one. Although after South Carolina beats Tennessee, but they're not even a ranked team. I mean, I want to play. Not that rankings mean everything, but I want to see them. I want to see them validate this season with a tough opponent. I just don't think South Carolina does that.
No, you're right. I agree with that.
I think that they need to play somebody that's would be considered more in line. I want to see them play a team that's. I don't know if there's a team as hot as Florida State, but I would like to see
top 15 team.
Yeah, something like that. Fish, any other thoughts on possible bowl teams that you would like to see them play?
No, not like I say. I like the ones that you said. UCLA, Kansas State would definitely be interesting. One of the Big Ten teams, like maybe a Penn State. Penn State. I don't know where Penn State's going to go. I mean, they're going to probably be the third ranked team in that conference. So someone like, yeah, I think a Penn State, Florida State game would be good. Penn State's got a very good defense. They run the ball. Clifford, I'm not a big fan of Clifford, the quarterback, but they do have two very good young running backs, and it'd be probably the best defense Florida State's faced all year outside of Clemson, but their team plays very well. They've had a couple moments where they've struggled stopping the run, but overall they're a very good defense. That'd be a fun matchup to watch. So.
Yep, I agree. All right, guys. Now we move. This used to be one of my favorite segments of the show when I had time to give more time to it, and I have not this week. Well, a short week trying to get ready for the Florida game, and with family coming in. But we all know people in college football. We stay in contact with them. There's going to be jobs that are going to come open here in the next 98, whatever, how many 4 days. I'll put it to you that way. I think that's 96 hours, but I'm not sure.
So you want us to be the Grim Reaper right now?
Yes, we're going to our Grim Reaper segment. we're not gonna start off Grim Reaper-ish. We're gonna talk about the team that we've talked. They make hiring a coach as complicated as they make firing a coach. What the hell is Auburn gonna do? We keep on hearing Lane Kiffin. He's trolling reporters that are reporting he's taking the job. That doesn't seem like a guy that's leaving to me.
Wait a second. Nick Saban once said as a Dolphins head coach, "I am not going to Alabama." And a week later, he's shaking the governor's hand on the tarmac. So,
oh God! And then I get a text this morning that Chad, whatever his name is going to Auburn as the head coach. A guy that was the head coach at SMU or wherever.
Chad Morris?
No. Chad Morris. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Dude, he won like one game at freaking Arkansas.
Yeah, he got ran out on the rail at Arkansas. Yeah. I don't think Auburn will take him.
Yeah, I was like, you got to check your sources, buddy. That's exactly what my response was when I saw that. What are you hearing, Fish? I know you got your ears.
I think the Lane train's going to Auburn. I really do. I just listen. This guy, go look at his career. 2 years. I mean, he's already been at Ole Miss for 2 years. I know one of them was probably a COVID year, but he's ready to check out new property in Auburn, and I really believe that's where he's heading. And Auburn will have a new head coach by Friday. I wouldn't be surprised if it's right after the Egg Bowl.
Do you think he's going to announce? Well, listen, there's also another rumor going around that Mike Leach is going to retire after this game. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard that. I mean, it seems like Leach is one of those guys that'll coach till they carry him out on a stretcher. But I'd be surprised on that. But you never know.
I think Mike Leach has got a lot of interest outside of football.
I would say he'll get a 7-figure contract to be on the networks.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, you know what? Some of these guys don't want to deal with the whole NIL stuff, and the game's changed, and they were part of the old guard, and they don't want. Leach isn't really the type that's going to go kiss players' butts and hand them a lot of money, in my opinion. So it's always possible.
No, I would think that the NIL would be something that would actually make a guy like Mike Leach, decide, hey, I've made a ton of money. I've got grandkids now. I can go live down in Key West and get on a boat every day and go hang out with Jimmy Johnson. I think that's so. I have not heard that. I've got a guy that's fairly well connected, talks to a lot of people, and this is coming from him. And of course, was listening to JP Peterson's show this morning. There is a lot of talk of Deion to USF, which a lot of people would think would be a home run. I've also heard that he is connected to Colorado. What are you guys hearing on Deion and possible destinations? You're obviously going to hear a lot about Deion to Ole Miss or Mississippi State if those two jobs were to come open. Where do you guys think Deion would be a good fit out of those four schools, the best fit?
You look at Deion, he's doing very well, but is it the wrong year to be the jobs that are really not fits for? I can't imagine Deion in Colorado up in Boulder recruiting. I think it's a hard job. You need somebody that I don't know if he's the right fit there. The USF job would make more sense just because he would have, a lot of athletes. I know, USF is not a top tier job, but still you could recruit very well there, get a lot of athletes there. You've seen what Levitt did. You've seen what good coaches have done there before. He can win. And if he wins at a program like that and does what he did at Jackson State, I think his profile as a head coach will even go higher. So I think the USF job would make more sense. I just don't know if USF administration can pull that off. I'd be very impressed if they could.
Well, USF is really good when they have good football ops people too, is what I've been told. So we'll see. But yes, they were once when they had. What's that?
Shameless plug.
That's right. But listen, you're right. It's not the job that it once was, but it could be a very good group of five job. Listen, I think the interesting thing is, is Ole Miss, is Deion going to be able to get a Power 5 job, or does he need to go to a Group of 5 before a Power 5 job comes his way? I think South Florida would be a great spot because he's from Fort Myers. He's close to there. He's known all over the state of Florida. Could hire a great staff. And if he turned that program around between the portal and who he could sign coming out of high school and win there for 2 or 3 years, I think he'd have his pick of jobs, right? So
he'd definitely have his pick of jobs if he does that.
I mean, that's the logical thing to do. Would obviously do what Fish said. And South Florida makes a lot of sense for all those reasons you said, Pat. I mean, heck, he's from Fort Myers, right? I mean,
right.
So the connections, half the coaches in Florida probably guys he played with or went to high school with or something, right? So it's that would make sense. You get it done there, then he had the pick of his jobs. The only he goes to an SEC school now. I mean, they'll win the press conference for sure, but long-term prospects. With his inexperience in navigating a big program and all that it takes, that would be a huge, and Deion could do it. Deion's a smart guy, obviously. He would, but the learning curve would be huge, and there would be some suffering early on, I would think.
Yeah. I've talked about that before on Seminole sidelines. To me, I know that he probably wants a Power 5 job, but I think the natural progression of things, of course, now the natural progression of things is not what it used to be. We've seen Jeff Saturday go from sideline or television analyst to head coach of an NFL team. So it's a different world, and such a different world that when John Calipari woke up either today or yesterday, he was the second highest paid employee at the University of Kentucky, as Mark Stoops has officially announced that Kentucky is a football school with his new contract that runs through 2030, something like that. So obviously he's taken his name off the potential blow. He was mentioned at both Nebraska and I believe there was one other place I'd heard his name. So he's off the market in the coaching search. What does it say to you guys? We've all been around football a long time, and we all know Kentucky as a basketball school growing up. What does it say to you about their commitment to football that they're going to pay Mark Stoops more than they pay their basketball coach?
Well, it shows you where the money is, number one.
Yep.
Right? I mean,
the money must be endless.
I mean, obviously SEC schools with the profile that they have and the network contracts they have negotiated, they bring a tremendous amount of money, and Kentucky's no fool. They're gonna leverage that. They got a guy that likes it there. They got a guy they like. So why not, right?
Yeah.
Well, he's done a great job there. Heck, I've always felt like Calipari anyway is the most overrated coach in college basketball. So good for Mark getting paid more than him. So I'm glad for Mark and those people over there. I have great relationships with that staff. I think the job he's done the last 10 years at Kentucky is one of the best college football jobs anybody's done. So kudos to him and that staff.
I do too. And listen, anytime you break a record set by Bear Bryant, you have done something. And he has more wins at Kentucky than Bear Bryant does, and that is saying something. I agree with you, Fish. I think I'd have to go back and look at who's been where for how long, but he would definitely have to have done one of the best 2 or 3 jobs in all of college football since his tenure at Kentucky began, because that is not an easy job. Mark and I worked for a similar school, South Carolina, that was similar in Kentucky as far as history in football, and that's not an easy job. And he's done a great job of we always talk about fit, and Kentucky's close to Ohio, which is where he's from, is being able to recruit that area very well. Listen, it's amazing. All right, we'll move on from the Bluegrass State down to the Lone Star State, where we would be remiss if we did not have our daily or weekly this therapy session with Jimbo. He's got LSU this weekend. It's not been a good situation there this year. I don't know what to believe. You read so much about that situation on Twitter and message boards and all of that. But I don't see him going anywhere. But is there any chance we don't see Jimbo at Texas A&M next year? And no matter what LSU game looks like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he had a big win against UMass last week. That was a big win, right? I mean, UMass, they gave UMass all they wanted. That was good.
Did you see the picture of the crowd after that ball game? The second half of that ball game. Wow.
Yeah, that was that. I mean, I thought that was Hard Rock Stadium, but
listen, and that kind of shit gets you fired, right, Mark? When they start.
From what I understand, though, it was like 25 degrees and raining, and I mean, why am I going to sit in that to watch UMass? And Texas, I mean, three and 8 team. I mean,
you want to see your team win for the first time in a month and a half.
Yeah, I guess. But look, $86 million is a lot of money. I don't care who you are, but Texas A&M likes to say that they can afford anything, and but that's still a lot of money. It's not a buyout. I mean, that's what he's owed. He's got a guaranteed contract. It's not like a buyout. So unless Jimbo wants to get out and wants to negotiate something down, then that would be the only way. But Jimbo's stubborn enough; he's not going to do that. So we're stuck with him.
I always wondered if they might reach an agreement and he say, you know what, I'm going to take the country road back home to West Virginia. So that's one of the possible scenarios you hear out there.
That would be him admitting defeat, and I don't see that.
No, I don't see it either. I think he's back, and I think he'll work the portal and spend money in the portal to offset some of those deficiencies where they found him this year, and I think he'll make changes on his staff, which we see year in and year out.
Until he gets a quarterback, they're going to struggle.
Yeah,
Jimbo needs a quarterback.
Yeah, he actually has one. It's just the kid's got to develop. I had spoken to somebody yesterday from there, and they're ready to go they're going to go to the portal heavily and bring in. They need older guys. From my understanding, speaking to my source yesterday, I guess they have 26 guys that were either true freshmen or redshirt freshmen that played this year, a lot of snaps. They feel like they're a very young team. They need some pieces on their team. They want some experience to help those younger kids. They still have time to develop, but they want to get some older kids in there that could help them. Their locker room's just way too young, and there's not enough,
maturity.
Maturity in that locker room right now.
Well, I want to tell you what, I watched a television show that they do on Aggie football, and they spent some time showing a post locker room scene after a loss. It was a bad look for that program that day. I was sitting there watching it with somebody I really, really respect from a football acumen standpoint, and his comment was he's lost that locker room. Just looking at the body language and all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, fascinating stuff as always. We'll have a lot more to talk about in the coaching rumor mill world, but let's go to our game picks for this week. And we will obviously get to Florida State, Florida at the end for those people that have been waiting for that. We've already got some people putting their score predictions on the message board. But let's start with the Egg Bowl because it is tomorrow night. We'll all be full and in some kind of elastic waistband pants by then. I think it's a 7:30 or 8 o'clock kickoff on Thursday night. Ole Miss, Mississippi State. I believe they're at Mississippi State. Could be wrong on that, but they are playing nonetheless. Who do you guys have in the Egg Bowl?
Go ahead, Fish.
I'll take Mississippi State just because I think you've seen this so many times. Lane, like I said before, I think Lane's off to Auburn, and I don't know how that team seemed very distracted last week with the rumors. Mississippi State being at home, the cowbells, everything.
That Ole Miss.
Yeah. Oh, it's at Ole Miss.
Yeah,
I thought you said. Oh well.
I was wrong.
Darn. Wrong. I thought you said. Well,
I'll get it straight now. They're at Ole Miss. My bad. At 7 o'clock tomorrow night.
Wow. Now it's tough, man. You know what? I'll switch that pick and go to Ole Miss. I'm probably making a mistake. Always go with the first answer, but I'll go with Ole Miss then.
I say throw out the records. Just being funny. Anyways, this is always a tough one. Lane last week Ole Miss got hammered, right?
Yes.
So it makes you think of is that team kind of checked out with all the Lane rumors and maybe the team knows something that we don't know for sure yet. And there's a lot going on as far as that goes. So I'm going to go Mississippi State just on that alone. If Lane is going to Auburn, the team's probably like, screw you. You know, I don't know. Maybe the coaches they're worried about their jobs more than worried about getting the team ready to play. That's always a factor too on a situation like that. So I'm gonna say Mississippi State, especially if Leach. Can you imagine if Leach is going to retire, going in there and saying, "Hey, this is my last game," and telling the team that they go out there and run through a wall for the guy, I would think. So yeah, I'll say I'll go Mississippi State.
Yeah, I think I'm going Mississippi State on this one. If y'all are right, and Kiffin's already checked out, and unless another part of this is if Leach is retiring, his team will probably know it before this game. I think that will help their cause. I think they want to play hard for him. They've won underneath him, and listen, they've got a really good quarterback in the Rodgers kid. They don't run the ball particularly well, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm going with Mississippi State in that one. All right, let's go to a rivalry that you and I are very familiar with, Mark. South Carolina, the world beaters, are volunteering and going to Clemson to take on the 8th-ranked Tigers. Who do you have in this game, Fish?
Well, which Spencer Rattler shows up? Aaron Rodgers, Spencer Rattler, or Tyler Haneke? I don't know. Before Saturday, it was going to be all Clemson, right? It's at Clemson, I believe.
It is 12 noon.
So 12 noon game. The away team has a way of winning this game a lot of times.
Clemson 14.5-point favorite, by the way, if you needed that information.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to pick the upset here. I'm going to pick South Carolina. I'm going to pick them. I'm going to say they found something last week, and Clemson's going to struggle scoring points. Maybe I don't know. This is a tough one because you just don't know what South Carolina you're going to get. I don't know. I'm going to take South Carolina.
Yeah, Fish, who you got?
Yeah, one thing I learned when you have a big emotional win one week like that, where the underdog wins, they usually come back to earth. I think Clemson's going to win pretty easily. I would take Clemson, and I think they'll even cover. So,
woo, a blowout. All right. Well, listen, I've got a fondness in my heart for South Carolina. I was a graduate assistant there. I really enjoyed my 3 years there. Particularly the first two. I'm not a big fan of Clemson. Listen, I think South Carolina is. We talked about Shane Beamer is already building a reputation of winning some games that you don't think he's going to win. They've got some momentum. I agree with Mark. What quarterback shows up for which team? I think it's going to be the difference in this ball game. Do you get good or bad DJ? Do you get good or bad Spencer? South Carolina does very well in the underdog role under Beamer. I'm going to pick the Gamecocks in this one, in a very, very close game. But yeah, that's who I got. We'll stay kind of tight to that game. Tennessee taking on Vandy, who just beat the Gators. Tennessee coming off a loss without Hendon Hooker, out of the playoff more than likely. Regardless of what happens, because I think that Hendon Hooker thing is going to factor into them making the playoffs. They've talked about that can impact, when they first started the playoff. But I think Tennessee rebounds, but closer than the experts think.
No, I think it's going to be a Tennessee blowout. Vanderbilt's not very good. And I know they beat Florida, but Florida left a lot of plays out on the field. And I don't think Tennessee's going to, regardless of whether they have Hooker or not, I don't think Tennessee's going to leave those plays out on the field.
Clark Lee is building a superpower at Vandy.
Yeah.
They're 5-6. They're 5-6.
Yeah. As good as Vandy played last week, I agree. Tennessee, Hendon Hooker was a great player, but I don't believe that was a one-man show. I thought they've done a very good job with that offense. I think those guys are good coaches. They'll have a bounce back. I think Tennessee's going to win too pretty handily in that game. So.
All right. Well, we got Tennessee rolling there. All right, USC and Notre Dame. I am not quite sure where that game is either. I think it's at Notre Dame. The Trojans just had a big win over their arch rival. It's at USC.
It's at USC, yeah.
It's at USC. And we got I didn't realize that Notre Dame is really 8-3. I thought they were more 7-4ish. But they are only a 5.5-point underdog on the road. Who you got, Fish? You got the luck of the Irish, or
I just
whatever they say at
Yeah.
USC, which I don't know.
I think USC has the best quarterback in the country. That travels. He's the best. He may be the best player in the country. May win the Heisman this week. I think he's going to put up big numbers. Notre Dame will be able to move the ball on USC's defense, but I just think USC is going to be too much. So,
Mark,
games like this, I think defense trumps offense. I think Notre Dame's defense is so much better than USC's. I remember when we went to Notre Dame in 93 with Charlie, and we had that high flying offense, and Notre Dame played a real simple scheme and just punched us in the mouth, and it took us a while to get up off the floor and get back in that game. I think that might be a similar kind of situation. I think Notre Dame go in there, punch them in the mouth, win the line of scrimmage, and end up winning the game. I'm gonna pick Notre Dame.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this one since I wrote it down as one of the game picks. And the one thing that changed my mind, and this is a playoff game for USC. They have no chance at making the college football. Well, their chances of making the college football playoff would take a big hit if they lost to Notre Dame. They've got a little extra motivation. They can't overlook anybody. Not that you're ever going to overlook Notre Dame, but I kind of agree with Fish. I just think Caleb Williams is going to be too much. I think Notre Dame will have success. I think it'll be a close game, but I'm going to go with USC in this one as well. All right, let's move on to the game that will certainly have ramifications in the college football playoff, and that is Michigan number 3 at Ohio State number 2 on a noon game on Saturday morning. We will all hopefully be waking up with a victorious hangover to watch this one. But who you guys got in this? Oh, well, I'll start. I'm going Michigan. I like the way they run the ball. I think although their running back kind of got banged up a couple weeks ago, so that if he's not playing, it totally invalidates my pick. But I think Jim Harbaugh catches a lot of crap. He probably is a very strange guy, but I think he's done an excellent job. And so I'm going to go with Michigan in this one over Ohio State.
What's the weather supposed to be like? Do we know? Anybody know?
Hold on, let me check with Jim Cantori.
Because if it's a rough weather day, I'm going to go with the more physical team. And not that Ohio State isn't physical, but they're more. Michigan is dedicated to running the football, and their line of scrimmage team.
47 degrees. It's going to be 47 and cloudy.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. All right, I'll go Ohio State.
All right, Fish, who you got in this one, buddy?
It's a tough game. The one thing about Ohio State is they haven't in games this year where they haven't played well. They didn't play really well in the Notre Dame game last week. I thought they struggled. I just think Michigan's a more physical team. I think that's going to show up again. I think defense, they're very good. Ohio State has a good defense, but then last week happened. They gave up a lot of points to Maryland. We'll see what happens. I like Michigan to go in and pull the upset.
All right, now we get another ranked on ranked matchup. Oregon State hosting Oregon. Oregon State's 8-3 and ranked 21st. Oregon is 9th ranked team and won 9-2, and they are a 3-point favorite on the road in a game that is going to be played in very sunny but cool conditions. 45, because now Mark has given me another responsibility. Come up with the weather for each game. So, I think Oregon is going to rebound from their loss to Washington, and I think they've had a great year on offense. Bo Nix has had a hell of a year. Oregon State, obviously one of the kind of the least talked about surprise seasons at 8-3. They've done a very good job there. Nobody ever talks about them, but I just think Oregon's offense is too good, and they're a pretty good football team. And listen, they're only a 3-point favorite.
No, that's a surprise.
Yeah, so maybe I'm buying brand here. It's more fun to pull for Oregon State because I like the underdog, but I just think Oregon's too strong in this game.
On the road, I'm going to take Oregon State at home. The fact it's only 3 points, that's a little bit surprising me. And you're right; they've kind of snuck up on us at 8-3. I don't know a lot about them, but for the sake of going for the underdog, I want to go Oregon State.
Yeah.
All right. Well, who you got, Fish?
I mean, I've watched Oregon State play about 3 or 4 times actually this year. They're one of the most underrated teams in college football. If you watched Oregon last week, Bo Nix is injured. He couldn't even really walk last week on his ankle. I was surprised he played the whole game. He was inefficient. I think with Oregon State's defense, the way they play, their attacking defense, and I think Oregon State's going to win the game on Saturday just because Nix isn't healthy. And I think without him, their offense scored 17 points last week against Utah, and they struggled to get there. So I like Oregon State.
All right. Well, I'm changing my pick. It's Bo Nix is not playing. I'm going to Oregon State. So we'll go there. All right, guys. So the game we're all excited about, and the reason we're here, Florida State hosting.
Wait, we're not doing the Iron Bowl?
Oh, Alabama Auburn. Well, that's bad. It's a bad oversight on my part.
Come on.
I apologize. In my head, this game is already over. It was over before the season even started. It's going to be a no contest wherever the hell they're playing at Alabama.
I got Alabama. I'll just make it easy so we can go on to the next.
Yeah, the tires on the caddy are going to be flat in Tuscaloosa. There's going to be no cruising through Bryant Denny for the Tigers. And,
no chance.
The next time they'll have a win is when
throw the records out, though. It's the Iron Bowl. Come on.
Well, as long as Nick Saban does not kick a 60-yard field goal, they should win the ball game. All right. Yeah. All right. So we're all jumping on Bama. And I think we're all going to jump on the same team this next game. All right. So Florida State going for its 9th win against Florida, guys. I think we've analyzed it. We've talked about it. We've waited all year for it. Fish, we'll start with you. Mark, you'll go last because you're a former player. But Fish, we'll go with you first.
The way Florida State's playing, I just think it's too difficult to go against them right now. I do think Florida has some things that they could do, but I just think at the end of the day, being at home, being that how big this game is, how much momentum it will carry going into the offseason, I just think Florida State's going to be too much. I think Florida State will also probably cover the spread as well. So I see Florida State winning the game by double digits.
What do you want to take a gander at a score? You don't have to.
34-24. So.
All right. So you're somewhere around where I'm at. All right. Well, listen, I just think that, Florida gives up way too many big plays in a run game, and that's what Florida State does well. There's nothing when you go into the study that Florida is not particularly deep on defense. I think as long as Florida State continues to do what it does and has done the last 6 weeks and really all season, which is run the ball effectively, pick up some big plays in the passing game, and as Mark alluded to, don't beat yourselves. The penalties, the turnovers. I just think, and I agree with you, Fish, this team is hot. I think Mike's got them focused. I think they're playing for a lot of reasons, and I think this team is really tight. You've got a first-year program at Florida that's kind of finding its way under Napier. And Florida State's got the best quarterback. They've got the best defense, and they've got the best offense. So unless this game comes down to special teams, which we've seen Florida State excel at, I don't think it's close. I've got Florida State 35, Florida 20.
Yeah. I think there's a factor here nobody's really talked about, and that's Richardson in the NFL draft, right? Are there people in his ear telling him to save himself and don't lose any money by getting hurt or doing something stupid? I think that's a real possibility. And if that is indeed the case, then it won't be close because, but the other side of it is he's the only quarterback we faced a true quarterback that's healthy we faced since, DJ Ungale, right? And Clemson scored 30 points on us. So that's the other part of it with a running game and a quarterback running the ball with a big arm. So that's the kind of thing that kind of gives me pause a little bit. That being said, I don't think they can stop us. So I think we're going to score 40. I say they score 21.
All right. So we're in agreement. Florida State goes 9-3. And listen, guys, the great news is we get to do one more of these because we got a bowl game to get ready for. So regardless of what happens on Friday night, we've got a bowl game to get ready for. Listen, guys, we ran a little long today. Certainly want to thank you guys that watched the entire show. I know we've got some people online right now watching. This is the first time we've ever done an Osceola Tailgate live. So we hope you've enjoyed it. It'll be available on Osceola YouTube. I'll be available at the Osceola site later on. You can watch it again or finish watching what you did not see. Mark and I will be back on Friday night, usually about 15 or 20 minutes after the game. We will go live with our first impression show on the Osceola Facebook page, Osceola YouTube channel, and Osceola Twitter page. We will be back. Hopefully, game starts at 7:30. Sometime around 11 o'clock, we'll go live for about 10 or 15 minutes. We will also have our show on Sunday, Seminole Sidelines, which will be live on the same three vehicles, or at least on YouTube at 6 p.m. on Sunday. Listen, big weekend for Florida State. We've still got our game preview coming, keys to victory coming on theosceola.com. Thanks for joining us on our Osceola Tailgate Show. Hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving and a great Friday night at the Florida State game.
Gobble, gobble. Go Noles.
Yeah, sign us off, Mark.
Go Noles.